Picture this. You need to see your brother. He lives 20 miles away. There's no car in the driveway because cars don't exist yet. What do? You walk 20 miles on foot at roughly 3 miles an hour. Takes about 7 hours. Leave at sunrise, arrive after dark, if your feet hold up and the weather stays kind. For most of human history, that walk was the fastest option most people ever had. Your ancestors spent hundreds of thousands of years moving at the speed of their own legs. Every trade route, every migration, every war march happened one step at a time. Then something changed how far a person could travel in a single day: the horse. Around 3500 BC, on the grasslands of what's now Kazakhstan, people of the Butai culture started riding horses instead of only hunting them. Archaeologists found bit wear on ancient horse teeth that proves it. A horse could cover 50 miles in a day. A walking man managed maybe 20. Distance shrank overnight. Riding bareback only moved one person at a time, though. Someone needed a way to haul grain, tools, and whole families. The answer showed up around the same era. In Mesopotamia, the wheel. The oldest wheel ever found, unearthed in modern Slovenia, is over 5,000 years old. Attach that wheel to an axle, hitch it to an ox, and you've got a cart hauling more than 10 people could ever carry on their backs. Empires learned fast that carts alone weren't enough. You needed roads. The Romans built close to 80,000 kilometers of them, paved with layered stone, engineered to drain water and outlast centuries. Some of those roads still hold their shape under modern highways today. The imperial post ran along them, a relay of couriers and fresh horses stationed every few miles. A message could cover 50 miles in a single day, a record nothing else on the planet beat for the next 1,800 years. For most ordinary people, travel stayed brutally local anyway. Peasants in medieval Europe often died within 30 miles of where they were born. A trip to the next big town took weeks of planning. Letters between cities could take a month to arrive, carried by whoever happened to be riding that direction. Two inventions changed the pace of everyday life after that: the stagecoach and the canal. English stagecoach lines by the 1600s could cover 60 miles in a single day if the roads cooperated and nothing broke down. Canals like England's Bridgewater opened in 1761. Let a single horse on the towpath pull a barge loaded with more coal than 100 wagons could manage. By the early 1800s, cities were drowning in a different problem: horses themselves. London alone had over 50,000 horses hauling carriages, cabs, and carts through its streets, and each one produced between 15 and 35 pounds of manure daily. Streets piled up. Flies swarmed everywhere. In 1894, a newspaper predicted London streets would be buried 9 feet deep in manure within 50 years. Newspapers called it the Great Horse Manure Crisis, and nobody had a real fix. Steam offered one answer first. In 1769, French engineer Nicolas Joseph Cugnot built a 3-wheeled steam wagon meant to haul cannons, widely credited as the first self-propelled road vehicle in history. It moved slower than walking pace and crashed into a wall during one of its earliest test runs. Steam engines eventually found their real home on rails instead of roads. George Stephenson's rocket hit 30 miles an hour in 1829, a speed some passengers feared the human body couldn't survive. While trains linked cities together, ordinary people got their own 2 wheels. The safety bicycle, introduced in 1885, gave individual riders something new: cheap, fast, personal transport that needed no feeding, no stabling, no stagecoach ticket. Suffragist Susan B. Anthony credited the bicycle with doing more for women's freedom than almost anything before it, because it let them travel alone. So when the first gasoline automobiles rolled out in the 1880s and 1890s, nobody was solving a brand new problem. Bicycles, trains, canals, stagecoaches, Roman roads, carts, and a rider on a horse in Kazakhstan had already spent 5,500 years working on it, each invention shaving hours off how long it took to get somewhere. The car as we know it was put together by Carl Benz. In January 1886, he was granted patent number 37435 for a 3-wheeled patent motor wagon with an engine under 1 horsepower. It topped out around 10 miles an hour. Nobody bought one. The public treated it as a pointless toy. In the summer of 1888, his wife Bertha took the machine without asking and drove 66 miles from Mannheim to Pforzheim with their 2 sons. She bought fuel at a pharmacy in Weislach because filling stations didn't exist. On the way, she cleared the fuel line with a hat pin and insulated a wire with her garter. Newspapers covered the trip, and the orders finally started coming. The car stayed a rich man's toy for another 20 years. Henry Ford broke that open with the Model T in 1908. In 1913, a moving assembly line started running in his factory. Assembly time per car dropped from 12 hours to 90 minutes. The price fell from $850 to about $260. A worker on that line could now buy the thing he built with his own hands. By 1927, 15 million of them had come off the line. After that, the count ran to whole continents. Today, about 1.5 billion cars are running on the world's roads. The same 20-mile trip that cost your ancestor 7 hours on foot takes 20 minutes today. Distance used to cost most of a person's day. Now it costs 20 minutes, and most of us never think about it.